What happens when one of the most respected actors in the world walks into a luxury dealership and gets humiliated like a nobody? When Liam Neeson enters quietly, no one recognizes him. They judge him by his coat, his boots, his silence. But what unfolds next will not only silence the room, it will spark a lesson the world will never forget. Watch until the end to see how Liam transforms one act of disrespect into a global message of dignity and power. The wind swept across the streets of downtown Chicago like a quiet warning. It was one of those grey mornings that held the weight of something unspoken. Beneath the dull sky, a tall man moved through the city with a slow, deliberate pace. His long black coat brushed against his boots. His beard was flecked with silver, his eyes heavy with thought. Most people passed him without a second glance. They saw only a tired man, a face half hidden beneath the shadow of time and silence. But it wasn't just any man. It was Liam Neeson. He wasn't surrounded by handlers. No flash of cameras, no entourage. Just a simple man walking through the city alone, with purpose in his stride and something unresolved burning beneath his calm expression. For months now, he had been searching for a very specific kind of vehicle. Not for himself, not for luxury or speed, but for meaning. He'd quietly supported a community arts school on the South Side, where students from rough neighborhoods found sanctuary through theater and film. Many of them walked miles to attend each class. Liam wanted to change that. He had a vision, to find a car that could be restored and gifted to the school. Something old, with soul. Something that could be made new again, just like the lives of the kids he mentored. He knew exactly where to look. A dealership known for its rare vintage inventory sat just ahead. Wealth clung to its polished windows like perfume. The name etched in gold above the door glinted like a crown on a building built to intimidate. He stepped inside. Immediately, the world around him changed. The lighting was bright but cold. The floor shined like glass beneath his feet. Rows of pristine vehicles gleamed in perfect silence. Symbols of excess arranged like works of art behind velvet ropes. The air smelled like money, polished chrome, new leather, artificial perfection. He paused, taking it in. There it was. Near the back, a 1960s coupe, dark blue, untouched by time, its curves like poetry carved in steel. He moved toward it, drawn to it not by its price, but by its potential. This was the one. He could see the students piling in after class, the laughter, the freedom, the statement that someone believed in them. But as he stood admiring the car, something else began to form around him, something less visible, but deeply felt. The employees, sleek in tailored suits, passed by him like he didn't belong. One salesperson glanced up, barely acknowledged him, then buried himself back in his phone. Another whispered to a colleague and chuckled, the words sharp even though Liam couldn't hear them clearly. He didn't need to. He'd seen it before. In airports, restaurants, boardrooms. The moment when a man is measured not by who he is but by what he looks like, and judged as less. Still he stood silently, examining the car's design, its age, its lines, the story it told. Then the energy shifted. Heavy footsteps approached. From across the room came the manager, Warren, tall, polished, with the practiced arrogance of someone who had grown used to control. He scanned Liam's coat, his boots, the weathered creases around his eyes. There was no recognition in his stare, only calculation. The atmosphere thickened. Liam asked a question, his tone soft, respectful. But the response was icy. The manager's expression curled into disbelief, then irritation, then open mockery. There was no offer to help, no attempt to serve. Just assumptions, stacked on assumptions, until they hardened into something bitter. He was treated not as a customer, but as an inconvenience. Liam stayed composed, his hands folded gently in front of him. Years of experience had taught him the power of silence, but the situation escalated. The manager's tone sharpened. His body language turned aggressive. The sales staff nearby didn't step in. A few watched, pretending not to. One even smirked. And then it happened. Warren stepped forward, fast, deliberate, and shoved Liam by the shoulder. It wasn't playful. It wasn't accidental. It was personal. It was the kind of shove that came from a place of anger or fear. And it didn't stop there. His fist rose, fast and careless, as if a punch could erase whatever it was that bothered him about the man in front of him. Time froze. Liam didn't flinch. He simply raised his hand and caught the punch mid-air. No anger, no violence. Just a steady, restrained grip that held the chaos in place. His eyes locked with Warren's, but they didn't scream. They saw. They understood. And what they saw was weakness hiding behind wealth. Warren's face paled, stunned that his act of dominance had been neutralized so easily and with so little effort. Around them, silence reigned. You could hear nothing but the hum of the fluorescent lights and the echo of shame beginning to settle into the bones of the room. Liam let go of the man's fist with quiet finality, not as an act of mercy, but as a statement. You cannot shake a man who has nothing to prove. He turned slowly and began to walk away. Each step echoed louder than the last. But just as he neared the door, he caught something in the corner of his eye. There, half hidden behind a display, stood a young employee, no older than 20, holding a phone close to his chest. His eyes were wide, lips tight. He wasn't just watching. He had filmed everything. And as Liam stepped outside into the cold air, the boy hit upload. What started as a silent insult was about to become a public reckoning. And by morning, the world would know exactly what happened inside that showroom. By dawn, the city hadn't changed, but the internet had. The video began to circulate just hours after it was posted. It was short, shaky, grainy at first, but unmistakably powerful. No captions, no dramatic music, just a simple clip titled, "Man Gets Humiliated at Luxury Dealership Until This Happens." And within that blurry frame, the truth unfolded. There he was, Liam Neeson. Not the polished version the world was used to seeing on red carpets or magazine covers, but the man in his quiet state. Calm, centered, unbothered by chaos. The clip showed him standing beside a rare car asking a simple question. Then came the sneers, the shove, the raised fist, and finally, the moment that froze millions, the moment where he caught the punch in midair without blinking. The world saw what the employees in that showroom had failed to notice. The power in restraint, the depth behind silence, and the unsettling strength of a man who didn't need to prove himself to anyone. The video exploded. Social media platforms ignited. At first, there was confusion. Was it really him? Why was he there? Was this staged? But soon, confirmation poured in. News outlets picked it up. Old interviews resurfaced. Clips of Liam helping children, teaching underprivileged kids in small community theaters, reading poems to cancer patients, donating anonymously to orphanages across Ireland. The puzzle pieces fell into place. The man the dealership had dismissed as a nobody turned out to be someone whose legacy went far beyond fame. And the world was furious. Thousands of comments poured in by the minute. Not just because a celebrity had been mistreated, but because something deeper had been violated. A collective understanding that kindness deserves dignity, and that appearances mean nothing when a person's soul speaks louder than their clothes. People began to share their own stories. A young woman posted about how Liam had paid for her theatre scholarship without ever revealing his name. An elderly man from Dublin recalled the day Liam sat beside him in a hospital waiting room, quietly comforting his grieving son. None of these stories were headlines before, but now they carried weight. They proved something the world already suspected. That greatness doesn't shout, it listens. At the center of this storm was the video. Its frame, rough and unedited, became a symbol. The moment when arrogance met humility and lost. News anchors debated the deeper meaning. Experts analyzed the body language. Influencers posted tearful reaction videos. But through it all, Liam remained silent. He didn't release a statement, didn't grant an interview, didn't post on social media. He stayed exactly as he had always been, out of the spotlight and close to the truth. Meanwhile, the dealership unraveled. The store's name was soon identified. Review pages were flooded with scathing comments. Calls for boycotts surged. Customers cancelled reservations. Major automotive bloggers posted exposés. The brand, once associated with exclusivity, became the poster child for elitist arrogance. Their official statement, bland, impersonal, and riddled with excuses, only fueled the fire. Inside the dealership, panic reigned. Warren, the manager, tried to justify what had happened, claimed he didn't recognize Mr. Neeson and that the situation was misinterpreted. But there was no misinterpreting the footage. The world had watched it, and worse, they had felt it. Employees began to leak anonymous testimonies to the press. One said the mistreatment wasn't new, that Warren had a habit of judging customers by their shoes, that he once refused to serve a combat veteran because he looked broke. Another said that when they tried to speak up, they were threatened with dismissal. The image shattered, and in that crumbling silence, something else began to rise. A movement. People started tagging businesses with a new hashtag, as true respect. Celebrities joined in, politicians made statements, school teachers wrote essays. A billboard appeared in downtown LA with the now iconic image of Liam's hand catching the punch, and beneath it the words, "Real power doesn't scream, it stands still." But none of this changed the fact that Liam had said nothing, had done nothing since walking out of that showroom. And as the pressure mounted, everyone asked the same question: what would he do next? What they didn't know was that Liam was already moving, quietly, deliberately, no press releases, no public agenda, just a decision made in silence that the lesson wasn't complete, that the story shouldn't end with outrage, but with meaning. He drove past the dealership 2 days later. It looked different now, fewer cars, darkened windows, fewer customers, a shadow of its former self. People inside noticed his vehicle. Some froze. One worker ducked behind a desk. He didn't stop, not yet. Instead, he kept driving, through city streets and quiet suburbs, until he reached a place that didn't gleam or shine. A small used car lot tucked between an auto parts store and a diner. No marble floors, no velvet ropes, just handwritten signs and a flickering open light in the window. He parked, walked in, and was greeted not with suspicion, but with a smile. The man behind the counter didn't ask who he was, didn't care about his coat or his boots. He simply said, "Welcome in. Let me know if I can help." There, among the dust and metal, Liam found something special. An old, weathered SUV, beat up but dignified. The kind of vehicle with a story buried in its dents and worn leather seats. The kind of car that had been places, that had carried families, that had lasted longer than most people thought it could. And Liam knew this was the one. He shook hands with the man, took a photo with the staff, and signed the papers with quiet satisfaction. No cameras, no announcement. Just one photo posted to a private page later that night with a caption that read, "True luxury is being treated like a human being. Thank you for reminding me." By morning, the post had gone viral again. The small dealership became famous overnight. Reporters camped outside. Customers flooded the lot. But what mattered more was the conversation that had started. A conversation about dignity, about assumptions, about the cost of kindness and the price of pride. And yet, even then, one question still remained. Would Liam return to the place that had tried to break him? Would he face the man who tried to define his worth with a glance? Would the lesson end with silence or something more? That afternoon, as the city buzzed with noise and screens flashed with his name, Liam Neeson stepped out of his apartment, locked the door behind him, and headed straight back to the showroom. The air inside the dealership was no longer heavy with confidence. It was quieter now, uneasy, hollow. The hum of luxury had been replaced with something colder, a silence born not of elegance, but of exposure. Glass walls that once symbolized transparency now felt more like cages of judgment. The floors still shined, but no one was admiring them. The cars sat untouched. Customers had vanished. Phones rang less. And every employee who remained walked with a tension they couldn't quite name. Then the door opened. Liam Neeson stepped inside. No cameras followed him, no PR team, no press. Just his tall frame, steady breath, and the kind of presence that made even the air stand still. The same coat, the same quiet steps, the same man they had tried to diminish. Only this time, everyone recognized him. Heads turned, eyes widened. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Even the few customers who had braved the empty showroom moved aside instinctively, sensing something was unfolding, something rare, something important. Behind the main desk, Warren stood frozen. His posture, once upright and full of authority, was now shrunken by the weight of public shame. His sharp suits no longer commanded the room. His confidence had cracked beneath the pressure of headlines, boycotts, and the viral clip that refused to die. But none of that compared to the quiet presence now walking toward him. Liam didn't hurry. He never did. He made his way to the very same car, the vintage coupe, still untouched, still gleaming, still beautiful. He ran his hand gently across the hood, as he had days earlier. The metal was cool under his palm, the memory still warm in the air. But he didn't smile. Not this time. Warren finally moved. He stepped forward, slowly, cautiously, like a man approaching a fire he'd once tried to light, only now realizing how quickly it could burn everything around him. His voice, when it came, was lower, almost unfamiliar, a tone not used to humility. He offered an apology, not just for the punch, but for the words, the tone, the assumption, the failure to see. He called it a misunderstanding. He used the word mistake. He tried to start over. But Liam didn't nod. He didn't shake hands. He didn't answer right away. He simply turned and looked Warren in the eyes. And for a moment, it wasn't the celebrity standing there. It was a man. Just a man. A man who had been misjudged, insulted, and pushed, yet never lowered himself in return. When he finally spoke, his voice wasn't raised. It didn't need to be. He said that the real issue wasn't how he had been treated. It was how people were treated, any person, every day, in places like this, by people like that. That respect wasn't a service to offer when someone proved they deserved it. That it wasn't something to be earned through appearances or income. It was the starting point, the foundation, and without it, nothing built above it would last. He paused, and the silence that followed didn't demand attention. It held it. He said he wouldn't be buying the car, not here, not ever, because what he had come looking for wasn't just a vehicle. It was an act of meaning, a gesture of good. And what he had found in this place was the opposite. He said dignity should never have a price tag. Warren didn't respond. Couldn't. The weight of those words pressed down harder than any headline ever could, and everyone who heard them felt it. Liam turned to leave, but before he did, he glanced back once more. Not at the car, not at Warren, but at the faces around him, the employees, the customers, the silent bystanders who had watched that first day and done nothing. He said he hoped this moment would stay with them, not as shame, but as reflection. That maybe next time someone walked through that door looking different, speaking softly, or wearing worn boots, they would choose differently. And with that, he walked out. No slam of the door, no grand exit, just the sound of footsteps, steady, firm, final. The silence inside the dealership didn't break, it deepened. That evening, the video of Liam's return surfaced, this time not from a hidden phone, but from the store's own security feed, quietly leaked by an employee. No confrontation, no anger, just words that landed with more force than any punch ever could. The reaction was instant. Again, the internet caught fire. But this time, it wasn't just outrage, it was something else. It was awe. It was respect for a man who could have torn down, but chose to teach instead. Photos of Liam's quiet refusal became viral symbols of dignity. Memes turned into messages. Headlines shifted from scandal to change. Schools played clips of the speech in ethics classes. Business leaders quoted his final words in boardrooms. Churches spoke about his restraint. Podcasts replayed the line, "Dignity should never have a price tag." But Liam had already moved on. Far from the noise, he stood at the back lot of a humble community school where teenagers rehearsed scenes from Shakespeare with worn scripts and glowing eyes. The old SUV he'd purchased had been cleaned, painted, and restored with help from local volunteers. And now it waited outside the school, ready to carry a new generation toward opportunity. That weekend, they held a small ceremony. No media, no stage, just the students, the teachers, and Liam, watching quietly as the kids piled into the restored vehicle for the first time, laughing and wide-eyed, unaware that their ride had once been the center of a global moment. He stood back, hands in his pockets, a slight smile at the corner of his lips. Not because he had won, but because someone else would now move forward. Later, that same car would be auctioned at a charity event. It would raise millions for programs in underserved communities. A symbolic act, yes, but one seeded in reality, one that meant something. That night, Liam was asked to speak. He stepped onto the stage in a modest theater with no red carpet, no flashing lights, just worn wooden floors and folding chairs filled with people who believed in change. He spoke briefly, simply. He said the car was just an object, that the lesson wasn't about him. It was about all of us. That in every room, every day, we are given a choice to judge or to understand, to ignore or to honor, to dismiss or to dignify. And then he said, real power doesn't push, it uplifts. The audience rose in silence, not in celebration, but in understanding. And though the world would move on, and trends would fade, and stories would be replaced with others, one truth would remain. Respect is still the rarest luxury of all. This wasn't about fame. It wasn't about revenge. It was about something far more valuable than any car, the power of treating others with respect no matter who they are. If this story moved you, subscribe to the channel for more true moments of strength, humility, and transformation. Because sometimes it only takes one person to change everything.